Alright, let's see if this thing's working. Michael, you read me? Should be able to chat, if I'm not mistaken. Doing this live feed is unfortunately the easiest way to do this. And if the feed cuts out, which it may do from time to time, hopefully it's only for a short while, it usually picks back up again. But whoever's watching can just type over there and let me know that the feed stopped, and I'll try and keep an eye on things. But let me kill the music and we'll get started as to what's going on here. Alright, Michael. Good. Michael, I'm going to present this in a way that everybody can benefit, so if there's some things I go over that may not pertain particularly to you, just bear with me. So, thank you, Michael. What I've got going on is, I've been talking to Michael, a friend from Crete, who has helped out significantly in the past with hsgames, development, play testing, editing. Extremely appreciative of all that. He's done impeccable work and deserves the utmost appreciation in that regard. But I've been talking to him briefly, and the subject came up that he had been playing, retaking Varaville, which is ASL starter kit scenario, starter kit number 1. And I said, you know, coincidence of coincidences, I had been playing Simple Equation, which is ASL scenario starter kit number 3. So then it became a subject of, well, how do you solo this? You know, I'm interested in doing that, I do this, well, how do you do it? And I tried to explain it through a couple responses, but it really doesn't do it justice unless you can show somebody what you're talking about. So, in fact, yesterday I had, again, synchronicity, whatever, had tried to film what I was doing so I could share with people. It didn't work out so well, obviously, because that didn't get posted. Tried again today. The video got to 65% on YouTube and stopped. It wouldn't upload anymore. So I don't know why I'm cursed with the video thing when it comes to trying to upload these guys. I use my iPhone. It's iffy, works sometimes, a lot of times it doesn't. Again, someday I'll get a camera, won't have to deal with all this. Or some nice listener will send me a camera. Yeah, right? No, eventually I'll get a camera. So, a couple quick things, because I'm looking down at what you're going to see in a second. That's why I keep looking down. But a couple quick things, and then we'll get right to this stuff. Console World Expo just took place. I've never been, not sure I'll ever be able to go. It's a cost factor, time factor, etc., etc. If you are familiar with Stuka Joe and have watched his videos, he actually went for the first time. He filmed a significant amount of footage, strung it all together. It is probably the closest you'll ever be to going without going. So if you get a chance, watch that. It's his most recent post, Stuka Joe, Console World Expo. And he, of course, showcases some great games, some classics, some stuff that's still coming out, being worked on. And one of those being Winner's Victory. New England Simulations. I've had my eye on this thing for a long, long time. Started to doubt whether or not it actually existed until I saw this thing set up being play tested. And that was extremely exciting. So if you're interested in that, you can take a look at that. Also, I'd like to add that for the first time I'm trying something different. This is not a podcast, this is not a Facebook page, this is not a new game, but it is a magazine, a physical magazine, and I'm asking for submissions for that. I already have a few people on board that will be submitting articles. One, Eric Lee Smith, Adam Starkweather, David Doctor of Triumph of Chaos fame, among other people. Don't let that intimidate you. All submissions are welcome, be you designer, player, etc. The subject matter varies as long as you can relate it in some way to wargaming. I encourage you to send one in. The length of the article, I'm willing to work with you on that. It can be anywhere from a couple paragraphs to a couple pages, depending. Again, I'm willing to work with you on that. Can't pay you for what you send in, but if your submission is used, you will receive a free copy of the magazine when it's printed. This is going to be a physical magazine. And I think I just hung up. So according to that, I'm hung up, but I'll just keep rolling. So the magazine will be a physical thing, glossy pages, just like any magazine you would expect to see. So release date for that, hopefully sometime around September. Submission deadline by the end of August. So we'll see how that goes. Again, if your article is used, you'll receive a free copy. So that should be incentive enough to get some articles coming in. You can send those to hsgames@gmx.com. If somebody wants to shoot me a line and let me know if I'm still feeding, that would be awesome, because I still look like I'm stuck. Anyway, that said, I'm going to go right down to this stuff, and if you're watching live now, I apologize if it's stuck. Otherwise, if you watch later, that should work itself out in the rub. So what I've got going on here, alright, we're still rolling. Let me see if I can get, this is the best angle I can get for what I'm trying to do here. It's not perfect, but it's the best I can get. So, here's what we're going to do. I've already done this a number of times. I'm going to have to do it again. Big deal. I don't have a problem doing that. The other thing with going live is if you make a mistake, you look like an idiot, but hey, nobody's perfect. I am reading from a script. No, I'm not reading from a script. That's a joke. You know, some people have a problem with listening to somebody read from a script, but I have to say, if it's something that requires a lot of memorization, a lot of facts you want to keep straight, I don't see the problem with reading from a script. Although, if it's an unboxing, and you're reading from a script, other than to get certain facts straight, that might be a little awkward. So again, this is a simple equation, which is, you're not going to be able to see up here, but I'm pointing at the scenario here. Here, I'll just move it down to there. A simple equation. When you want to play solo, specifically with ASL, or I guess ASL Starter Kit, there are certain scenarios that lend themselves to better solo play than others. This would be one of them. Retake and Variable would also be a good choice. Typically you want something where the Germans, if you're going to beat the Americans, you want the Germans to kind of sit back and hang and defend and wait as you move in. That is exactly what this is. Also, I'll point out, when you do this, you want it to the best of your ability. Again, don't look for perfection. But to the best of your ability, you want to set up your units according to platoons. You'll do that with each leader. So, for instance, we have 4 leaders here. And I've already got them divided up. You'll equally, again, distribute to the best of your ability a number of squads to each leader, thus forming a platoon. So here I have anywhere from 3 to 4 squads that comprise, if you will, 4 platoons. And there's some other stipulations to that, which I'll get to as we move along. You'll do that for the Americans, you'll do that for the Germans. Now, it's a little bit different placement-wise when it comes to the Germans. Now, regarding placement for, in this particular instance, the Germans, and what do we got going on here? If you don't have this, simple equation takes place in 12th of October, 44. You've got elements of the 404th Regiment, 246th Volksgrenadier Division defending, and elements of the 3rd Battalion, 26th Infantry Regiment, Americans moving in. That is boards Y and Z, and setup for the Germans is anywhere on board Z up to, I believe, equal to or less than any hex number 2 on board Y. It's not a question, it's board Y. And the way I do this is, now you can use, I guess, pennies or whatever you like, but I use these little guys from ASL, and they're not being used for their intended purpose, as you'll see in a second. But that's what I use. And what I'm going to do is divide up, so to speak, this area that the Germans will be setting up in, because they're allowed to set up anywhere in here. What I'm going to do is divide this into particular areas. Each area will consist of the hex in which I set the marker, and then each surrounding adjacent hex. So, for instance, what I've done here, hopefully you can see a little bit, is placed one there, and that in F2, which causes each surrounding hex to coincide with that marker. Then I'm going to go right along, and again, don't look for perfection here. Don't take too much time thinking about it or pulling your hair out. You just want to try and cover as best you can areas where there is cover that the Germans would potentially set up shop. You're going to have 4 platoons that will be set up somewhere on here eventually when I get to it. And I'm placing these so that adjacent areas are covered about as equally as I can get. And I think I usually end up running. I've done this a number of times as I keep fiddling, trying to not perfect, but make this easier on myself. So we're almost there. Again, I'm trying to cover as best as I can. Areas, let's even put stack could go there conceivably. And I think that does it. There might be 1 or 2 areas that will not potentially have Germans, but that's okay. So then we take, because there's going to be 4 platoons, right? So you're going to take 4, I use red shits, can be whatever again. You're going to place them in a cup, and then you're going to count off from those 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 gray chits, and these are from Axis and Allies. Good question, Michael. I'll get to that in a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. If I did the math right, I will not embarrass myself later on. Michael asks, how many question marks do I have on here? Well, 16 plus 4 would be 20. So 20. Then we go back to our Germans. We'll start with each leader, which is again 4 leaders. As such, we place the leaders in a cup to draw from in a second. Then we take, and this scenario also works out really well distribution-wise for the numbers when it comes to, you've got 4 support weapons, so you know each platoon will at least get 1 support weapon. Which one will they get? Well, you'll find out. Put those in a cup, that's your support weapons, and then put every squad that you have for the Germans, which could be a 4-4-7 or a 4-3-6, in a cup. Shake that, roll with that, and then start placing your units. Now, for some of you, you might say, this is ridiculous, it's tedious, it's laborious. Why would you do this? If you gotta ask why, I guess this isn't for you. But for the rest of you, and for myself included, I have to say, this is actually rather exciting for me. Instead of thinking, well, I'll put the Germans here, or maybe they would, you don't know where they're going to go. So we're going to do that now. And there are 2 ways of doing this. What we're going to do, for brevity of time's sake, is pull for all of them. Now, I guess during play, you could move through with the Americans and then determine line of sight, or if you're adjacent, to a concealment marker, and then slowly draw to see if there's actually Germans. You could do it that way, but I'm going to pull for all of them. You still get the randomness, and you do away with that godlike control. And I've told myself in the past it doesn't really matter where you start doing this, but in retrospect, I think if you start, because when I played this without doing it this way, I typically put them towards the front as a buffer zone for the Americans that will be moving in this way. I think for the most part that is doable, realistic, if you will. Maybe not all of them would be up front, which is why we're doing this. But to kind of increase the chances of them being up front, and this is arguable, I'm going to start at the back. So we'll start with this one here, right? We're going to pull its shit. And we have a gray, which means nothing. So we'll just pull that off the board and be done with it. Go to the next one. Gray, nothing, pulled off the board, done. Again, this could seem like a real drag to some of you, but I guess I'm flawed. I enjoy this type of setup stuff. So back row is going to have nobody. Let's move more towards the middle here. Nobody there. Still drawing. Nobody there. We have a red. So the red is, looks like it's on Z5. So we'll stop. We'll take our leaders. Shake them up real good. We're going to go draw one, and I have drawn an 8 neg 1. We're going to place him in Z5. Additionally, and these are from the last Blitzkrieg. I use them all the time for various stuff. You can use, again, your own method, whatever you think's best. I use this. Why am I using this? Each leader needs to be designated so that you can have a corresponding chit to draw and activate that leader later on. I suppose you could use their names and be all fancy about it. I'm going to designate this as leader 1. So I place it with the 1 at the top, like that. Now we need to draw a support weapon. Drawing a light machine gun, and we need to draw 3 squads. We've got a 4-3-6, a 4-4-7, and a 4-4-7, so fairly healthy platoon here. Now once it comes to placing on the activated hex or any surrounding hex, just use your best judgment. Sometimes I stack the entire platoon. It just depends. Sometimes I split it up. In fact, I'm going to move the leader to the adjacent hex. To the hex that was adjacent to that which was activated. Place 2 squads there, and the activated hex with a light machine gun and a squad underneath our leader in an adjacent hex. That is platoon number 1. Then we continue in the same vein. Nothing there. Nothing there. Oh yeah. U7's got a platoon there. So now we're going to pull, same deal. We've got another 8 neg 1, which has my name but spelled with an A. I wish they could have spelled it correctly. Alright, so this is, let's call this platoon number 2. Will they have a light machine gun or a heavy machine gun? Looks like they get the heavy machine gun. Let's put that in the adjacent hex in front. Pull our 3 squads. Boom, boom, boom. And we have 4-4-7, again, 2 4-7s and a 4-3-6, which I will divide up, putting both 4-4-7s with the heavy machine gun and the 4-3-6 underneath the leader. So that's platoon number 2. And the other cool thing about this is, like, again, instead of setting up in front and just waiting, now that I have some platoons behind, it gives them something to do. Instead of just sitting there, now I have to figure out how to move up to meet the Americans, if so desired. Typically I do. Nothing there. We got 2 platoons left we're looking for, and we have one here on their right flank that is FF2. Back to our leaders, we draw 7 neg 0, place him accordingly, and it's going to be a light machine gun because there's only 2 left, so there's no point in even making much to do about that. Let's put him in adjacent there so he's got line of sight that way, and 3 squads, 2, 3. Again, 4.47s and a 4.36. We'll put 2 4.47s with the light machine gun in EE2 and a 4.36 with the 7 neg 0 in FF2 and make this leader number 3. You guys still with me, or are you falling asleep? Alright, so then we go to the next one, and that is nothing. We're looking to place our fourth and final platoon, and we've got it. It is in Z1, so we can disregard any of the rest of these. They are now irrelevant. And it looks like, and this creates interesting options for the Americans. So now, with this whole area rather vacant, would it not be tempting to try and move into that area as opposed to over here, right, naturally? Unless they can get there first, which I'm sure they probably can. So we're looking at Z1. We've got our final leader, our final light machine gun. Leader was a 7 neg 0, by the way. Putting the leader adjacent there, light machine gun there. And then our final 3 squads, which are probably 4.47s and a 4.36. Nope. 4.36s and a 4.47. So that'll be our weakest platoon. And that will be platoon number 4. Now our Germans are placed, and as painful as that might have seemed, again, I found it rather enjoyable. I don't feel like, it almost feels like I played somebody else and they set up the Germans, right? That's the whole point of this. With the Americans, you can simply, I guess you could do the same thing if you wanted to. I typically don't. I just decide what's the best avenues of approach. I could place one just for giggles for you. I believe they can only be placed in hex 7 or less. So let's place first one here, K7 with a 6.66 and a medium machine gun. And I'm not going to do all the Americans, I'm just for example's sake. Now I'd love to place here, but those are number 6 hexes, so I can't do it. So instead I'll place an L7, J7, and K8. Another thing to bear in mind is I don't play, at least I haven't lately, been playing this exactly according to the ASL or ASL starter kit rules, heresy of heresies. What I do have is a command range which coincides with solitary ASL, and that is a whole nother ball of wax. It's great, it works for what it is. It's heavy, it's complicated, but that's always an option. This is a much quicker, believe it or not, quicker, easier way of getting at least a sense of solo play. So that would be American 1st Platoon here. And the command range for each leader is 2 hexes. Squads need to be within 2 hexes and line of sight of their leader to be in command. If they are not, their morale drops by 1. And other things. And when I say other things, I've got other systems that I've been trying to graft onto this, so those would be the other things. What else? When it comes to defensive fire, or if you like opportunity fire, whether it's American or German, I have them run a morale check before they can do it. If they fail that morale check, they cannot conduct defensive fire, or again, if you like, opportunity fire, apples and oranges. All right, so what else do I got? The numbers that I talked about for each leader, again, they're going to correspond to a chit that you draw. So we've already got the Germans out here, and I don't have a printer right now, so I need to reprint these. What I started with is letters, but I've got A, B, C, and D, which correspond to 1 through 4, A of course being 1, etc. Put these in a cup. Again, this is up to you. You can do that just for the Germans, or you can do it for both sides. I do it for both. Same for the Americans, A through D. And when it's your turn, you, instead of having to decide who goes first, you draw a chit. B would be platoon number 2, so this platoon would do their actions first, etc. Draw the next one, and we draw C, which would be 3, so platoon 3 would be next, doing their actions. It just, again, it takes a little bit of the godlike control out of things and makes it feel a little more less, I don't know, predictable, or what the word I'm looking for is. So that's the gist of it. You've got it right there. Of course, me being who I am, I have to complicate things, right? So I've taken upon myself to grab the system from Panzer Command, which is also used more or less in Devil's Cauldron, and stick that onto here. It, as you can imagine, didn't work so well. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. One of the main problems was the dispatch points and the dispatch command rating. So what I did is chuck the dispatch aspect and just kept the command points and the command rating. What am I talking about for those of you that are unfamiliar with the Panzer Command system? I'm talking about a system of activation and action points. So the way I've got it, at least for right now, is each side needs to determine a command rating, and this is supplementary stuff. You can stop watching at this point. The gist of what I wanted to show you, I already showed you. But this other stuff, you'll need to determine a command rating for each side. The way I've come up with to do that is you add each leader their morale level and come up with a number. You divide that by 7, that is your command rating. Do that for both sides. And then at the beginning of each turn, you roll 1 die 10, divide that in half, add it to your command rating for that side. That is your allowed action points for that turn. I've also got it where movement is free, as is advance, but fire and rally need to be paid for via action points. I'd tell you more about it, but this is really all over the map, literally, pun intended. It's a lot going on. It's changing quicker than I can write it down to get some sort of sense of consistent rules basis. But I just wanted to share that with you for a giggle's sake. Again, you've got the gist of what I'm doing here. Some people like to go further and determine, well, what would a squad do? And they add various ways you can come up with that. You can roll dice. There's a decision tree that you can access. I think Lock and Load Tactical for their solo system, which is really an adapted Conflict of Heroes Eastern Front solo system. I think they got a lot of decision trees that you can use to determine what a squad does. I don't mess with that stuff. Why? Because particularly with squad leader, you've got phases, and the phases are really going to dictate what you do. So you don't have to determine, am I going to fire, am I going to move, am I going to do this, am I going to do that, because you're limited to what you can do based on what phases it is. Your real decision is, do I want this person to do this particular thing or not? So if you wanted to come up with a way to randomize that, I suppose you could do that. really just use your best judgment, try and be rational, and go from there. So I think that's it. I've shared with you what I've intended to share with you, and before I sign off, I'm going to read what everybody's written, and any more questions, comments. Okay, we're all caught up there. Michael, any last words before I sign off? I'll give him a second here if he's typing. Well, that's pretty much it. And remember also, certain scenarios, again, lend themselves to better solo play than others. But I'd be interested to hear of any of you crazy enough to try this and let me know how it worked out. So, I just did not understand something. What's the something? We have a question in progress, so that's why we're pausing here. I've pretty much said all I need to say at this point. Why do you draw chits regarding the squad leaders? It's a way of randomizing where they're going to go. So, for instance, if this hex activated, I've got 4 squad leaders to determine who goes there. Which one? Well, I suppose you can do it without randomization, but do you put the good one there? Do you put the least powerful one there? So, and the same with the sport weapons and the squads. It's a way of removing that godlike control or that subconscious control and completely randomizing where these guys would be. What else? For example, you draw the chit of this one and then Alright, so you draw the chit, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read these questions. You draw the chit of squad leader number 2, and then, could you give me an example? I'm not sure what you mean, Michael. Tell you what, I think we'll just kill this instead of boring the hell out of people, and I'll reconvene with you, Michael, online, okay? Lest people got to suffer through this. Alright, so that's it. Thank you all for watching. I'd love to hear back regarding any of this or any suggestions or anything. So, I'll talk to you guys next time.